So we're going to discuss Chapter 2, Applications of Biology. Today we're going to specifically work on healthcare in the 21st century. Healthcare in the 21st century is changing based on the needs of people around us. We've had one of the biggest changes in the COVID-19 vaccination. To developing that vaccine is pretty neat. But let's look at a couple things that we need to look at. Biologists are not just out there making information up. Biologists are combining research and data from many different fields of sciences. We don't just look at one field, but we're looking at geography, we're looking at climatology, we're looking at a lot of different areas to get as much data as we possibly can. Now, if you've already read this section, you know that we talk about Rita Caldwell. She's one of the researchers in biology that really looked at the data from the oceans and the temperatures of the oceans and the chemistry to reduce the number of cholera outbreaks. Cholera is a disease that causes some lower gastrointestinal problems, and it's quite unpleasant, and it can cause death. Cholera is very present in third world countries. A lot of people were getting this. But Rita really solved the reason of why we have cholera, how it's getting spread from person to person, and how we can prevent it from getting spread. She used things called satellite data, where they actually predicted the locations of the outbreak based on the temperatures of the water sources at that time. That's pretty cool that you can look at thermal pictures and thermal imaging and know where you're going to have these cholera outbreaks based on the water temperature because the copiopods lived in there. She also developed a low-tech solution for people in the third world countries to be able to drink the water and not have some of these problems. One of the low-tech solutions that were developed by Rita was the fact that they just took a simple piece of cloth, put it over a pot, and then they were able to filter out all the water. And that really reduced the amount of cholera outbreaks. And it seems very low tech and very simple, but a simple scarf that all the women in the country wore became the life-saving technique that they needed to stop cholera. So, disease in a changing world. Epidemiology is the study of diseases and how they spread. Epidemiologists work for places like the CDC and the World Health Organization. The CDC is based out of Atlanta, Georgia. It's the Center for Disease Control. This is the United States version of the World Health Organization, or WHO. The World Health Organization is based out of Geneva. They're the ones responsible for making sure the world's population was vaccinated for smallpox. Whenever there's a disease outbreak like hantavirus or cholera, the CDC in the United States and the World Health Organization globally will send epidemiologists to those areas to do more discoveries and see what's going on in in the area and why the disease is reoccurring. Scientists learn more about the nature of diseases and their ability to prevent and treat them and their impact on society by going to those places. We can never say a disease is truly conquered, but we can say disease has been conquered. Vaccinations have allowed us to rid the world, or most of it, of smallpox. Smallpox is kind of like chickenpox, and you should Google a picture of smallpox. It's these little pustules that form all over your body, and it's a huge irritation. You'll have pussing, bleeding. A lot of people died from it. You could lose your vision, it could come in your throat and you could have your throat close, or you could lose your vocal cords. Like, there is just a lot of unpredictability to this disease. However, if you Google a picture of smallpox, it's probably not something you want to get in your lifetime. And you don't have to worry about it. You haven't been vaccinated for smallpox unless you're deployed to the military. I haven't been vaccinated for smallpox. Our parents were, at least mine. What they did is they took it's a syringe with about 100 needles in it, and they shot it into your arm. And it had a low dose or kill the vaccine. You had to get one pustule, and then that prevented all the immunity you needed. My husband's been vaccinated for smallpox too because he deployed with the military. Diseases like this, we don't necessarily have to give a vaccination for because most of us aren't going to go to a third world country, and we don't have smallpox in the United States. Measles has almost been eradicated from the United States through the MMR, measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine. However, we do have some small outbreaks of people who are not vaccinating. You can Google what measles is if you want to see what that disease is. It is definitely not a disease that I would want to see a young child get, or even myself. But vaccines have become crazy in the news right now. Vaccines are safely developed and administered. If you look at vaccines like COVID-19 vaccine, we have now looked at the genetics and the genome of the virus or bacteria causing that. In the case of COVID-19, we've looked at the genetics and we have actually mapped out the entire genome or have a complete genetic map of that specific virus, which is pretty crazy cool. From there, we can develop vaccines from this. The vaccine technology for COVID-19 was not first developed for COVID-19. It was developed for something called rabies. However, the rabies vaccine isn't really a popular vaccine that we give to people anymore because most people are out in the wilderness getting bit by rabid skunks and dogs. So it's not really a vaccine that we administer. However, the technology basis for that was used to help develop the vaccine for COVID-19. It's amazing what happens when you have hundreds of thousands of people working together simultaneously, sharing information around the world. That's what happened with the vaccination for COVID-19. It's pretty amazing that we were able to do this. We're also able to, in technology, have a lot of innovations based on a horrible thing called war. The human population has always had medical advances in the time of war. To understand medicine, biology, and science in general, we have increased our lives, but every time that we have a war come out, we have a new technological advance to help save the people fighting the war. In the Civil War, we had what we call the sterile technique developed. This allowed for us to clean utensils before going into somebody else and maybe wearing a pair of gloves and taking them off before you stuck them into another person. This reduced the spread of disease and allowed soldiers to live more. We used to amputate a full leg, and then we learned how to fix it by setting the bones. We had to develop prosthetics in the Civil War, and they've advanced all the way up through our last war in Afghanistan. People who lost their limbs can now walk because of these bionic limbs. These assistive technologies have been starting to develop, and they're developed because of wars, not because there's so many people born without limbs. We also will have computer interfaces. These are awesome technologies. We can literally stick a camera in a syringe, put it in your arm, and that can scope your entire body. So we can have it follow your blood vessel, and it can go all the way to your heart and find out where the clots are. And then we can just extract that little camera. It's pretty cool when you start thinking of it that way. We also have cochlear implants that allow little kids to hear or adults to hear for the first time. Hearing aids are amazingly advanced. We have so many technologies that we're able to do that interface with a computer that allow us to speak, to hear, and to even explore the human body. We have something called battlefield medicine. These are devices that are usually created to save lives on the battlefield. We have bandages that all soldiers should carry with them. These bandages will you can shove it into an open wound and it will clot. So it has clotting factors in there and it seals the wound so that they can get to a hospital on time. We have remote surgery centers, which are actually huge white tents, and they have surgery in them. They're just as clean as any medical hospital. They're pop-up surgery centers. That's crazy. So they can do these life-saving techniques to people when they're not able to be in a hospital themselves. Battlefield medicine is really advanced so that we can learn more about how to save the lives of the soldiers that are there. And we have more assistive technologies to help them improve their lives. One of the assistive technologies that my soldier is getting put into him is going to be an electrode pack. My husband had back injuries that he occurred while serving and deployed. And because of that, his nerves are firing when they're not supposed to be firing. And so what they're doing is that they're putting electrodes, kind of like electrical stimulators, into his back. And they'll send electrical impulses to stop the nerves that are firing in the wrong spots from reaching his brain. So he won't feel as much pain. Hopefully, it will improve the life and mobility of that soldier. For your last part, I want you to do page 32, question number 6. This question is asking you to write an essay that explains your thoughts on why humans would be able to live longer, healthier lives and understand as our understanding of biology increases. You must include examples of technology that would enable humans to live longer. So you're going to do a little research. I know I mentioned some of those technologies here, but there's so many that you haven't even thought about. This is the assignment that is going to be on Classroom attached to this video. So I hope that you teach me something. I want to find out some new technologies. You can even use technologies or apps that are found on your phone that help increase human life. Those apps are being developed all the time. And if you have a smartphone or an Apple Watch, or I think a Garmin, you can actually have these assistive technologies on you right now. I hope that you double space it, 12 font, 1 page, Times New Roman or Arial font, and make sure that you don't change the margins from default. All right. I can't wait to read your papers.